Welcome back everyone, my name is Chris and this is Level Up Mechanics. Alright guys, in today's video we'll be modifying the factory headlamps on my 2017 Toyota Tacoma using products from 3 different companies, including Diode Dynamics, the Retrofit source, and a Canadian company, Klearz, K-L-E-A-R-Z. Links to each of the companies will be found down below. This video will be an overview of how I modified the headlamps on the Toyota Tacoma, so if you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below. And if you like what you saw, give me a like, don't forget to subscribe, and with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to need to do in order to remove the headlamp assemblies is we're going to need to remove this front grille right here. In order to do that, it's just 2 10mm bolts. Man, I need to replace these bolts, they look rusty. And then also these 2 plastic retaining clips, one on this side and one on this side. Let's go ahead and pop off the grill and then I'll show you the next step. Alright, now that the grill is off, the next step will be to take off the bumper. Technically, you don't have to take the bumper all the way off. There is one bolt behind this bumper right next to the fender that holds the headlamp assembly in place. You'll also have these 2 top bolts here, and I also think that there's going to be some sort of plastic retaining clip or tab somewhere in this corner here. You don't have to take off the whole bumper in order to take out the headlamp assembly. You could just take off this fender flare, pop it out of the way. There's some plastic retaining clips holding this in place. You unpop those, disconnect the bumper from the fender. There's going to be a bracket here and it'll hang a little low, so then you can access this bolt that holds in the headlamp assembly. However, I'm going to go ahead and take it all the way off. It'll give me basically more room to do the necessary electrical installation of the headlamp assembly portion. I'm also going to remove this lower air dam and keep it off. I like the look of Tacomas that do not have the air dam. You get to see more of the tire and just looks more aggressive in my opinion. So I'm going to remove that while I'm taking the bumper off. So let me go ahead and take off the bumper. Alright, as you can see now, I have the front bumper completely torn off of the vehicle. In order to take the bumper all the way off, you would need to, for one, you would need to disconnect this connector. This connector is for your fog lamps. Disconnect the connector because the wire harness for the fog lamps is on the front bumper. Then there'll be a couple of clips over on this side, a couple of clips over on this side, a couple 10mm bolts that run along the bottom of the bumper, and then for the sides you will basically need to unclip the fender liner. There's one clip right here and one 10mm bolt up there. You'll also need to pop this fender liner, or not fender liner, I'm sorry. You'll also need to pop out this fender flare from the front bumper. They're gonna have these clips on the inside right here. There's 2 right here. And then if you need some extra room, there's some actual clips, I think orange or red. There's 1 or 2 back here that you can sort of clip to help pull back. And then in order to get the front bumper off, I have to unclip it from this bumper fender bracket. You will have to pull the front bumper out, and the lip of the bumper on the back side of this bracket will actually overlap the back of the fender bracket. Make sure to pull the bumper over this little component right here where it bolts in through, and you'll be able to pull the bumper off of each side of the fender and then pull it forward in order to remove it. So now that the front bumper is completely off, it's going to give me tons of room in order to mount whatever electrical work that I need to do for the headlamps. Now we're going to get started on removing the headlamp assemblies from the vehicle. You're going to have these two 10mm screws right here. This 10mm bolt that holds in your bumper to fender bracket, you'll remove that as well because it bolts through onto the headlamp assembly on the back side. And then it looks like the fourth spot to remove the headlamp looks like just this guide retaining tab right here that you'll remove as well. One quick tip when removing the headlamp, it's clipped in right here by this clip. You don't have to mess with the clip at all, just leave it in place. What you'll do is you'll take the whole headlamp assembly, pull it towards the center of the vehicle and out. So once you have everything unbolted with the other three, pop these guys up to clear the tabs, then slide towards the center and out. Alright, so now that the headlamp is out and off of the vehicle, it's time to prep the headlamp. We're going to take off everything that we can and get it ready so we can throw it in the oven. This is a process called baking, where we'll heat up the headlamp assembly so that way the sealant between the lens and the housing softens up to a point where we can tear the lens off of the housing assembly. As far as temperatures are concerned, I'm probably going to do about 220 degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to remove this trim piece. It's 2 Phillips screws. And then on the back side, there's going to be 5 Phillips screws. One right here, one over here, one right here, one right here, and one right here. I'm also going to try to remove the wire harness for the DRL board that's inside the headlamp assembly. It looks like you just pop the connector off over here, take this little boot, pop it out, and it looks like there might be a access point right here that you can twist open to get access to the DRL connector, which is right here for the DRL circuit board. So I'm going to go ahead and get this headlamp prepped. Afterwards, I'm going to show you all of the components that I have and what I'm going to do once I have this headlamp disassembled. Alright, now that I've prepped the headlamp assembly so we can do the baking process, let me go over everything that I want to do and install. First thing we have that I purchased off of the retrofitsource.com is a tool called a seal splitter, and basically this tool is going to allow me, once I have this sealant heated up, I'm going to be able to stick the tool in between the housing and the lens all along the headlamp assembly, and it should give me the leverage I need to help pry the lens off of the black housing. I also have a set of relay assemblies with the pigtail wire harness. It comes with a kit of 6 and I purchased this off of Amazon. Gloss black automotive paint. I'm just going to paint all of the chrome trim inside the headlamp black to give it a more aggressive look. This is a push button switch that I'm going to install on the dash. This is going to help control my demon eyes that I will install because I want to have the ability to turn the demon eyes on whenever I want. So I purchased this switch also off of Amazon. Here we're gonna have some sanding paper, very fine 400 grit, just to rough up the chrome surfaces on the trim pieces inside the headlamp to give the paint a little extra grip when painting all of the chrome pieces. These are from Diode Dynamics. These are some side marker bulbs to replace the factory halogen bulbs. We also have Diode Dynamics turn signal bulbs. Here are some clear side markers that I'm going to replace the amber ones that are in the stock lamps. I bought these from a Canadian company online called Klearz, Klearz.com. We have HD halo lighting from Diode Dynamics. We have these HD halos that I'm going to install around the projectors on each headlamp. These are some resistors for the turn signal in case I have hyper flashing. I may or may not need to install them. I need to install the bulbs first to see if they blink fast or not. If they blink too fast, then I just need to install these resistors. These are the demon eyes that I'm going to install. They're going to go inside the projector housing, and they are an RGBW demon eye from Diode Dynamics, so I'll be able to choose whatever color pattern or whatnot via Bluetooth, and I'll be able to control that over my phone with their app. Here's the Bluetooth RGBW controller, which will allow me to change the demon eyes as I want using my phone. Oh, and I forgot to mention, with this halo kit, this one is a switchback halo, so it will light up a super bright white as a DRL light during the day. When your low beams are on, it will dim a little at night, but it'll still be pretty bright. And then these are switchback halos, so anytime I use my turn signals, these will actually turn amber in color and flash with the other turn signal bulbs on the front headlamp assembly. So that's pretty awesome. Here from Diode Dynamics, I have their butyl headlamp sealant. When we disconnect the lens off of this housing, there will be butyl in the crevices. I won't need to use much of that, as we'll be able to reuse the butyl that's in there already. This will just allow me to put a very thin strip in addition to what's there already to help make sure that the lens seals back onto the housing properly and that I don't have any water leaks. Here we have some Morimoto LED H11 bulbs that I'm going to be putting in the low beam projector of the headlamp assembly. I got these also from the Retrofit source. So I would have gotten Diode Dynamics, but I went with the Retrofit source option because these bulbs and Diode Dynamics bulbs both have a very similar 3-year warranty and look to be similar in performance. And I ordered them off of the Retrofit source because I had some custom projector lenses made up for these headlamps. So I'm going to actually be replacing the glass of the projector, and you can customize if you really want to do something with some laser etching to create a custom look. My wife has named our truck Red Rum, so I figured it would be awesome, or we figured it would be awesome if we put some custom etching design up on these lenses. So obviously, if you're a Stephen King fan, you should get a kick out of this because it is pretty cool looking. Look at that guy. So awesome. Should look good with the demon eyes as well. Continuing, we have the wire adapters for the LED low beam bulbs. Also, I purchased some halo installation wire. I see a lot of people use epoxy or some kind of adhesive to attach the halos to the headlamps, but with heat and vibrations, I think that using an epoxy or any type of adhesive will eventually fail given enough time. And I don't ever want to have to open these headlamps ever again. So in addition to some adhesive, I'm going to use this halo installation wire to secure the halos onto and around the projector. This is just going to give me a peace of mind knowing that those halos are never going to move for hopefully the life of the vehicle. Okay, so here's kind of the finished product look, obviously, since I've done all the work already. But let me show you how you would remove the headlamp assembly once you've taken it out of the oven. You would want to start at the seams and use a tool. A lot of people use a screwdriver, but that kind of messes with the headlamp housing when you're running it across trying to split it open. This headlamp splitter tool, this trim piece tool, actually came in really handy in making sure that I didn't damage the housing along the seam of the lens. What I found that worked best when taking the lens off of the housing was to start at the straight edge right here, and while it's hot, stick your headlamp tool in between the seam and start prying and going across the seam in order to get the main portion of the headlamp assembly lens loose, and then continue going along the seams on the big end where it's easy to pry open. I found that it was much more difficult to pry this portion of the lens off since it curves, and there is more of a chance for the housing to crack. So I went along the big portion of the headlamp first, and then as it started to cool down, I basically took this heat gun right here and started to apply more heat across the portions that were a little harder to separate. And this allowed me to get the temperature of the butyl sealant that's in there to get it up hot enough to where I could start prying this corner apart with a little more ease. Now, make sure that when you're using a heat gun that you do not keep it in one spot too long. If you keep it in one spot too long, you're definitely going to melt the lens or the housing or both. You have to do even motions across the area that you want to heat up, and do not let this heat gun hit one part of the headlamp for too long of a period, or else you'll definitely warp and melt the plastic of the headlamp assembly. So make sure you use slow fluid motions just to get the temperature up to help you remove the lens from the headlamp. Alright, so now that I've kind of told you how to remove the lens from the housing assembly, I'm going to go ahead and show you everything that I did inside the headlamp and show you how I figured out how to install the halo eyes, my custom projector lens, and the demon eyes, along with my side marker that I replaced. So first thing I want to show you is that obviously I painted all of the interior trim black except for the clear lens lines for the turn signal. I liked the look of the clear lens diffuser better than painting it black, so I went ahead and kept it clear. So everything is held in with Phillips screws. So you'll just need a Phillips screwdriver to take everything off. The DRL board, this is the updated one that I put in from Diode Dynamics. This uses more of a machine screw threads, and there's 3 of them, one right here, and one right here. You'll take off this, and you'll take off this cover for the turn signal, and then all of these screws across the trim pieces in order to take off the trim inside of the lens so you can paint it. The side marker clips into place on this trim piece right here, so you'll just take this trim piece off and pop out the old lens and put in the new one if you want to change that out. For the Diode Dynamics halo ring, I drilled a couple of small holes. One was a little larger to make sure I could get the wiring through the trim, and then 2 more holes on the bottom and towards the inside in order to install some halo installation wire to hold the halo ring in place. Now moving on to the actual projector. In order to replace the projector lens, there's going to be a metal ring behind the glass, and it's held in by about 5 of these tabs right here. And what you will need to do is just bend the tabs out along the projector housing and then remove the ring in order to remove the glass from the projector. The projector is 3 components. You're going to have this glass housing, and you're going to have a metal plate in between, and behind it is the reflective housing for your low beam headlamp bulb. In order to remove this from the housing assembly, you're just going to have to, it's held in place by tabs here, here, and a screw right there, right there. In order to take it out, you'll need to remove these 2 screws. This is a separate component. And then in order to take this component out, you'll have to unclip from these retaining brackets and then pop the assembly out. At that point, you can disassemble the projector housing with more Phillips screws that hold everything in place. In order to install the Demon Eyes, I had to take it apart, and I don't know how well you can see because it's really hard, but there's the Demon Eyes. I used the bracket that came with the Demon Eye kit from Diode Dynamics, and there's no OEM mounting place in order to install the Demon Eyes, so the metal plate that is in between the other 2 components, I drilled a hole and put a screw and a nylon nut on one side, and then on the other side I had to epoxy the bracket onto the metal plate in order to make sure that the Demon Eyes won't move after everything's installed and operational. There's the custom glass that I purchased from the retrofitsource.com. It came out really well. It was a custom etching that I ordered, and it is really awesome. Alright, so now I'm at the point where I am going to put everything together and reseal the lens onto the housing. In order to do that, you're going to need some butyl sealant. This I also purchased from Diode Dynamics. So this sealant is basically a rubber type sealant, and it is stretchy, so you can thin it out as needed. I left the original butyl in the headlamp housing. I'm just going to add a thin layer to the butyl that's already there. So I will take this sealant and run it along the seam of the headlamp housing, so that way I can seal the lens and create a watertight seal for the headlamp assembly so no moisture gets in. So what I'll do is I'll run the butyl along the seam, throw this headlamp housing only in the oven. I'm going to increase the temperature to 250 degrees for about 15 minutes, just so I can make sure that the sealant is nice and soft. And when I'm done with that, I'll take the housing out and I will place the lens back on and press everything back into place. And once I know that the headlamp lens is sitting flush where it needs to be, at that point I will be able to go ahead and install the screws on the back side to the lens, and I should be good to go at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done, and then once I'm done resealing the lenses, it will be time to actually put everything back together on this guy. It has been a very big project, so I'm looking forward to getting this done and seeing what the results look like. So here we go. Alright guys, so I kind of jumped the gun. I wanted to make sure that I had all of the electrical done before I started disassembling the headlamps, because I want to make sure that the DRL boards, the halo eyes, or the halo ring, and the demon eyes all worked before I actually installed them in the headlamp assemblies. I pretty much got it down. You guys will see the final product once everything's installed and in place. For example, since I have 3 separate components, I went ahead and each component has an individual driver, which I zip tied all 3 drivers for each side onto this bracket for the bumper. And so you'll have a driver for your halo rings, you'll have a driver for your demon eyes, you'll have a driver for your DRL board, and these drivers just basically control the power that's going to those LED components. And then in order to power the driver, you have to tap into the wiring harness. Now with Diode Dynamics, they have an installation paper that comes with each kit that tells you which color wire to tap into in order to power up the component correctly. Again, I'm adding 3 different components to both sides. Alright, I have finally resealed the headlights. It was a very lengthy process. I heated up the housing assembly with a new butyl that was inserted along the seam, and once it was heated for about 15 minutes at 250 degrees Fahrenheit, I took it out of the oven, put the lenses back on, and I used the heat gun just to help get everything in place after my initial fitment. As far as a difficulty rating in regards to doing this project, it's a solid 3 out of 3. It's not easy, it takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. So if you're going to do this, make sure you do your research first and make sure that you have all the tools that you need to do the job correctly. It is a big job to do these upgrades, so you're going to need a lot of patience and a lot of time. I would expect this would be a weekend project. It'll take about 2 or 3 days. So with the headlamps now resealed and ready to go back on the car, I will go ahead and put everything back together, and then we should be ready to see everything as it should work.
Alright guys, now that everything is installed and put back together, let's go over all the different features on these headlamps, and afterwards we'll take a look at what they look like at nighttime, which should be pretty awesome.
Alright guys, the first feature on these headlamps that I wanted to show would be the demon eyes that I installed. These demon eyes again are from Diode Dynamics. They are Bluetooth controlled, which means you can download Diode Dynamics app on your phone or tablet and control them via Bluetooth. Here, if you want to see, we have the Diode Dynamics app. And once connected to Bluetooth, you can see all of the different components. You can have multiple components installed on the vehicle and controlled via the app. For example, my demon eyes are currently the only ones I have, so we'll click them. And then, if you wanted to change the different colors, you can choose anywhere on the wheel to change the colors of the demon eyes. You can also change the brightness. You can set different patterns. You can also change the speed of those patterns, different colors, a whole bunch of different options. You can strobe. The possibilities of Diode Dynamics Bluetooth controlled items, including these demon eyes, are quite extensive. You can do custom patterns and presets that you want using the app. It's quite awesome, and I definitely recommend their products. And just as a quick tip, with these demon eyes, when you turn them off and back on again, the demon eyes will resort to whatever setting you had set last. So whatever feature that you wanted the demon eyes to do before, it will always default to that feature every time you turn them back on and off. So if you change it in the future, then it will stay that way every time you turn the demon eyes on or off, which I think is pretty awesome. Alright, this is the daytime running lights. They are definitely really bright. Definitely really bright. It's kind of hard to get a good picture of it. But this is basically what the daytime running light feature would look like with the halo ring and the DRL board from Diode Dynamics. Alright, this is how it would look when your hazards are on or your turn signals for the corresponding headlight. Again, these components are extremely bright. This is how it looks with the low beam LED light bulbs. Here is the LED side-marker bulb from Diode Dynamics and the clear reflective side-marker from Klearz. Alright guys, one other cool little tiny feature that I like also includes the fact that anytime that you lock your vehicle or unlock your vehicle, these components will also turn on, just like the normal turn signals would turn on a factory headlamp. So for an example, when I lock the vehicle, everything flashes, and when I unlock the vehicle, everything flashes again. I just think it's awesome. Kinda nerded out by it. It's really cool. I'm very happy with the outcome of these headlamps, and yeah, I hope this inspires you guys, for anyone out there who might be willing to take a shot at modifying their headlamp assemblies. It's a lot of work, but the payoff is also very rewarding. So I highly recommend it for anyone who has the courage to do this. Alright guys, that does it for this video. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. Don't forget to like if you enjoyed the content that you watched today. And please consider subscribing, as it really helps out the growth and the future of my channel. But with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at what these headlights look like at nighttime. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.